Hi, everybody. It's time for another team training lesson for the Oklahoma Housing Needs Assessment. Today, we're going to be talking about navigating another module of ArcGIS called ArcCatalog. And this is, again, part of our series here looking at ArcGIS software, which you can see here in our prototype model flowchart. So we're actually going to have quite a few of these. So if you're already proficient in GIS software, you might want to skip ahead or just look at the topics that you need a refresher on. All right, so I'm going to reshare here. I'm going to go back to ArcMap, and if you left off with the navigating ArcMap exercise, then I think you'll recognize this is the same map that we were using during that exercise. And for this exercise, I want to take a look at ArcCatalog. And if we go up here to Windows and we click on the catalog, it will open up a little sidebar. Now, ArcCatalog is a separate module. You can actually open it all by itself by clicking on the ArcCatalog icon without having ArcMap open. But most of the time, I find that you're using it inside of ArcCatalog, and you can open and close it as you need. You can also pin it over here on the right. So I just hit the little tack pin, and it made a tab over here on the right. Along with the search function, which is part of ArcCatalog. We'll be talking about both of them. So ArcCatalog is basically your data management tool, and it shows a much, it's sort of similar to the table of contents here, but it's showing all of the data that I have specified at a location. So I'm here on my C drive on this laptop computer I'm using. And I'm over here in my workspace, and you can see here it lists a lot of different folders here. And if I click on the little plus sign next to any of them, it opens it up. And so I'm using GTK ArcGIS, and I'm happen to be using the data in chapter 4 here. Which you can open and close, just by hitting these little plus and minus signs. You can open up the folder. So the data folder, it has a database in here, world.mdb, and that has various feature classes in there that we're using, shapefiles, cities, countries, and so forth. And you can see some of these are already listed in our table of contents here. So basically, ArcCatalog lets us see what we have in our catalog, and we can add and move things around in it. So if we wanted to add something in the data folder, you could just right click on it and see where it says, oh, here, you could delete it, you could copy it, right? You can add new things. And I'm not going to go through all these right now, but like for instance, we could add a shapefile here, and then it would ask me, what's the name? Is it, what kind is it? Point, polyline, polygon, etc. Then you'd specify it, say okay, and then you'd have a new shapefile there. And just for your edification, if I do create a new shapefile, most of the time it has nothing in it, right? It's just a file, and then we'd have to populate it by importing or drawing in the different shapes that we wanted to have in there. Okay, so a lot of times what you're doing with ArcCatalog is you're trying to find data that you have, data that you don't have, that you want to know what it is. And so it's very useful to let you look at things that way. Up here on the top here, you can change how the panel looks. So you can see here's a tree up here. I'm gonna slide that if I can. I'm gonna slide that up a little bit. And you can see here, if I go to world, it will list, it will show these little thumbnails, and you can do that, or you can have a list, or you can have the details that would show, okay, what is it? It's a it's a personal geodatabase file class, and that sort of thing. Icons, right? So it's very similar like to Windows, where you're just navigating and you want to look at things in different ways. Now you'll notice this one here actually has like a little preview of the countries layer, and that's because I made that. And so to make that, I'll demonstrate here how we do that. So let's just select here on the cities layer, okay? And if I right click on that, I'm going to open up item description. And it brings up this little dialog box. And you'll notice the catalog went away, and that's sort of annoying because I have to keep opening it and closing it. But anyway, we're at the cities, and you can see there's no thumbnail is not available here. If I hit preview, though, it will show me a thumbnail, which is a lot of the little dots here. So we're looking at the preview of the geography. And if I hit this little icon over here, it will actually create a thumbnail. At least I think it will. It's thinking. And apparently this takes a minute. There we go. And if I go back to description, now you'll see that there is a thumbnail, right? And if I go back to our catalog, you see it's also showing me a thumbnail, right? And I could do the same thing for any of them. But if you don't create the thumbnail, it's not going to show up. Once you've created it, it always shows up there whenever you need it, And, going back to this, the cities, all right, so it says the selection cannot be displayed. There we go. And there's a preview, and you can look at the geography, or we can also look at the table here, the attribute table, right? So that's also handy because maybe you don't remember what attributes are in a certain file. Maybe you don't even know, and you just want to look and see, oh, okay, what do we got here? And you can navigate through it, and it has some, functionality. If we go back and look at the geography, you'll see that, you can you can zoom in a little bit. You can identify. So like if I select one of these points, it will give me and say, okay, that's the point for Calcutta, right? So, it doesn't have all the functionality that ArcMap does, but it does have enough that you can, kind of explore your data. Now, if you hit the description here, it's going to show you the metadata, right? This is what's called metadata. So the data about the data. So it tells you, what it is, maybe who made it, what its geographic extent is, if there's a scale range specified, limitations there might be, and any kind of information that might be interesting to you that you want to know. And you can make your own metadata. If we hit edit here, it will, let you just go in there and edit or add metadata if it doesn't already exist. And so it's always good practice. So like when we're creating our databases, I think it's going to be, good practice for us to go and add our own metadata for us, so we know what it is. But also, like if we share the data, people using it would know, hey, this is the metadata, where it came from, and some facts about it. All right, I'm going to close this down. We'll go back to the catalog, and I'm going to open up the countries layer here, just so you can see. Well, maybe I am. There we go. And on the preview, and so let's just zoom in here. I just want to show you, like if we zoom in the area that we're kind of interested in here, where Amelia Earhart and her navigator disappeared. If we select ID, we can say, oh, okay, there's Papua New Guinea. So it kind of flashes on there. All right, so that gives you a little bit of an intro to the catalog, and over here next to it, you'll see there's a tab for search here. And if you open that up, we can actually search. But before you search, whatever you're searching has to be indexed, right? So we're going to go up here, and we're going to click on this, and you'll get this search options here. And we can go here and let's say we wanted to look at chapter 3 and chapter 4. We add those, so we select those, and then they're on here now. Now I actually got chapter 4 on here twice. So I'm going to remove it once, and then I'm going to say index new items. And then it's going to index them so that they're searchable. If you don't do this step, you won't be able to search it. You know, in many cases, search engines that I've used sort of do this automatically for you, but in this case, this is what you have to do. It's thinking right here. You can see it saying indexing down here, and I don't know how long it's going to take, but it can take a minute or two depending on how much data you're making searchable. There we go, and so it's okay. Now we can go over here, and like if I search for Earhart, now it will show me all of the different shape files, all of the different layer files that have to do with Earhart, and I can click on those, and and it's interesting. You can click on the link, and it will take you to it, right? It will actually, locate it for you, right? And so then, let's go back to search here, and now I'm gonna look for I'm gonna search for ocean here, and then you can see, okay, so we got seafloor, and so like let's go to the seafloor TIFF one here, and I'm going to open this one up, go to the item description. And if we look at the preview, you're going to say, oh, wow, look at that, right? And so this is something that we haven't seen before, and that is this is a raster coverage. This is not a shapefile. It's not a polyline or a point. It is actually a raster file. In this case, it's the ocean, so it's known as a bathymetry file, right? And it's really kind of interesting. These coverages, the raster files, they behave differently, and they're pretty clever. So if I click on identify here, I can click on the ocean somewhere, and you'll see that it has a pixel value, and it's -5889, and so that is actually the depth of the ocean in meters. There, it's actually very deep, right? It's over 17,000 feet deep, and the darker the color, the deeper it is. So this here, you may not know this is Marianas Trench here, the deepest part of the ocean. And so if we select on that, it's kind of in the way here. Look at that, right? So it's over 30,000 feet deep, more than the depth of Mount Everest. If you hit the light colored, the white areas, see they're not nearly as deep, 1925. If you hit in Australia here, it's just going to have no value because there's no bathymetry data for land. So it's just looking at the ocean here. So it's really kind of interesting. You notice there's no thumbnail. I can hit here and create a thumbnail, and then it will show up just like it did for the shape files. It will do here for the raster files. Now this is a layer file, so it has a color attached to it. If we go back to the catalog and look at the actual TIFF that this comes from, it will show up as a black and white image. Okay, so the actual blue color was added as an attribute, and we'll talk more about not as an attribute. I'm sorry, as a property, and we'll talk more about how these properties of layers are added in future lesson, probably the next one. All right. So moving along here, I'd like to kind of conclude this lesson to talk about another feature in ArcMap this is very similar if you've ever used AutoCAD or some of the CAD software where they have model space and paper space, and so the model space corresponds to full scale view, which is what you usually use when you're designing something, drawing something, and you're drawing at full scale. And that's what we're looking at here. It's called map view, right, or data view, and everything's one-to-one. But when we want to print this out or export it, we want to maybe do that on the size of a piece of paper. And so down here at the bottom, you've got data view and layout view, and they're just tiny, right? They're just tiny little icons down here. I don't know why they make them so small, but I'm going to switch to layout view. And what you're going to see here is that our world view here it's inside a window called the data frame. And there's only one data frame in the drawing right now because that's by default how we start out here. And it has the whole world in it. And you can use your data view tools over here in the same way that you would normally, right? So even though it's inside a data frame, you can zoom in and out you got to pick zoom, Sean. There you go. And go back and forth and that sort of thing. This is just like a piece of paper. You can see it comes out, the default's 8.5 by 11. We can go up here to our drawing menu and select text here, and we can click up here and we can add text like route Earhart followed. And you can type whatever you want in there. And if we take our selection tool, it's kind of small here, but if you double click on it, you can change the symbol of it. All right, so we'll go to 24 here, and I got hit OK, and then hit apply, and so you can add basic annotation like this right inside of ArcMap. So that's how you can manipulate the data frame, and it's worth pointing out here that when you're in the data frame view, you actually have two sets of toolbars here. One for moving around in the layout view. So you have the little, it's very hard to see these little symbols, but you have like the little plus sign for zooming in, but it has a piece of paper behind it. That means layout view. And then this is the data view. And if I use the zoom in on the layout view, a very different thing happens, right? I can zoom in on the piece of paper. And this takes a little getting used to if you're not used to working in both layout view and in a paper space, a model space or data view. I also want to point out that you can go up here and change your view preferences, and they have data and layout view listed there. I also want to point out that you can customize here your toolbars, and you go to customize toolbars. And so like if you're not seeing the layout view, right, if you don't have it, maybe I should have said this at the very beginning, but you can go to toolbars and then make that layout view there. And you can move your layout, your toolbars around the layout however you want to arrange them. Okay. All right, so now, there is no limit to the number of data frames you can have in a layout. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add another one. I'm going to go insert data frame. And so it makes another little box here, which I'm just going to make it a little bigger here. You can just pull on the grips if you want to change the size of them. And you can see what it's done in my table of contents. It's created another new data frame, right? And I can actually change the name of that, right? I'm going to change it to disappearance area, because this is going to be a blow-up map of where Earhart actually disappeared. Now, there's no layers in it yet, but if I open up catalog here, okay, all right, I'm going to put in here this disappearance area, and then I'm going to put the diverging flight paths, I think, in there. Okay, yeah, and then I think I would like to also have the seafloor layer, and it says, okay, you've added a data source with a missing spatial reference. This happens quite often, and if this happens, it will usually display it, but it may not project it the way the other data is projected. And the way to correct this is to change the projection in the data frame. I'm sorry, in the data file. And we'll go over that at a later date, but basically it still works. And so now we've created a second map here. I'm gonna copy this. Text here, so you can see I just click copy and paste it, right? It's just like any other operation in most graphic programs, and then you can just click on it there and edit it. Except I can't spell. But this is very handy if you're printing something out, or if you want to create a view where you're looking at several scales at once. And we can zoom in here. And notice, you can only activate one at a time, right? So if I right click on it, I say, okay, I'm going to activate this one. Now that becomes my active one, or I want to go back to this one, activate this one, right? And if we zoom in here, you'll see there's a little tiny island there, right? And we can, if we double click on that, we can change its color. And this is I'm sort of foreshadowing here. We're going to do a lesson on changing the symbology, which will explain this in more great detail. I'm gonna zoom to this layer. There we go. All right, so just in summary, we've learned how to use ArcCatalog and its search function, and a little bit about layout and data views. These are fundamental things that you use all the time when we're working in our ArcGIS and particularly ArcMap. So for our next lesson, we'll start talking about the symbology for different feature classes in ArcMap.